My name is Dr. J Cardinell, and each week I'll offer a leader challenge for small group leaders. Today we are in the second part of our Teaching Like the Master series, and today we're going to look at object lessons. Object lessons are the most tactile form of teaching. We often think about them in terms of a children's sermon or something like that, but really object lessons can connect with learners of all ages. It gives us something to hold on to, a mental image to come back to. Jesus used object lessons. He may have used them even more than we know. One time in Matthew 18, he used a person as an object lesson. He was teaching on humility, and he called a child over into his midst as he taught as an object lesson for his hearers. Let's consider another time Jesus used an object lesson. Look at Mark chapter 4, verse 30. And he said, "With what can we compare the kingdom of God? Or what parable can we use to describe it? It's like a mustard seed that when sown upon the soil is the smallest of all the seeds on the ground." Now there's a lot going on in this chapter. Earlier, Jesus had been teaching the disciples about parables. Then he gave them two parables. And then he asked them this question: what parable would you use to talk about the kingdom of God? You see, he's asking a question, getting them thinking about the kingdom of God. And he's asking them to think about how they would communicate that to someone else. We don't know if they answered or they bat around some ideas back and forth. The gospel didn't give us that. But then I imagine Jesus either holding up a mustard seed or pointing to a mustard plant going, "Guys, it's like a mustard seed. You understand? It's small and then it grows and gets real big." You see, Jesus is using an object lesson to point them to a deeper spiritual truth. And so let's consider using object lessons in our small group time. One thing we want to consider when using object lessons is to catch the attention of the group when you're teaching on something that might even be familiar to them. Now, object lessons can be small things in the room or small things you bring in. Something that's unobtrusive, something you just kind of pick up quickly and show them. Maybe, for example, on your table in your small group room, you have a flashlight just sitting there, just randomly sitting on the table. And you're teaching about Jesus as the light of the world. And as you're teaching, maybe you just pick up the flashlight and you turn it on and say, "Jesus is the light of the world." Now, is that awe-inspiring? Is that amazing teaching? No, but it's just one little thing that someone might remember and might latch onto about a light in darkness. So sometimes small groups, you can use something a little more extravagant. Maybe you even bring in a 2x4 when you talk about that speck in someone else's eye. Or maybe you lay out a sleeping bag or set up a tent even in your room when you're teaching on the Festival of Booths. Now, why would you do something like that in an adult classroom? Because it's an object lesson to point them to understand what the original object lesson, the Festival of Booths, was all about. You see, object lessons are just one way to catch people's attention and point them to a deeper truth. Object lessons can be used to start the class as well, to get people thinking in the right direction. Think about the beginning of the movie Forrest Gump. He's sitting on the bus stop and he's got in his lap a box of chocolates. And he says, "Life is like a box of chocolates." You see, that box of chocolates, that's an object lesson for the movie we're about to watch. You never know what you're going to get. It's an object lesson for his life. So we can start our class with object lessons. Some of these might be, you might start it with a video. You might even just put a picture of the Sea of Galilee up on the wall or on the screen in your group time, just to get people thinking about the Sea of Galilee as we go in to teach it. You might bring in a life vest to talk about storms on the sea. You might even be a little lighthearted and bring in a child's boat and put it in the water and talk about how we face storms in life. You see, we can use these things to start our lessons to get us going. I thought one that's coming up in a few weeks, we're going to talk about how Paul spoke in a way that people could understand. You could start your small group time with some foreign language words up on the screen, maybe some Spanish words up on the board of the screen there, and maybe you ask the group to maybe tell you what those mean. And then you pull out your Spanish-English dictionary and you turn to the words and you read the definition there. You see, do you need the dictionary? No, but it helps, again, point out the fact that we need to speak a language people understand. So as we're teaching our lesson, we can use these object lessons to begin the class and also to begin maybe a point in the lesson. Object lessons can even be tangible actions by group members. Maybe you're teaching on God as creator and sustainer. I did this a few years ago. I had my group before we got started, really. I said, y'all use your phone and look up the 7 wonders of the world. And they did that. And I said, now tell me which one you would want to go to, which one you would like to take a vacation to. And they did that. And I used that to segue into God as creator of those wonderful things. The action of them looking them up and seeing the picture of them themselves on their phone, that was even an object lesson. So how do you find object lessons? Well, first, you keep an eye out. I encourage you as you are preparing for future lessons to maybe look over the titles of those lessons or maybe even read the main point of those lessons, and then keep an eye out in your daily life or your interactions for things you could use. If you know something is coming up, something like, oh, I could use that in my class. Maybe keep a note on your phone. You see something, you read something, you hear a podcast, you have an encounter in life, and you just kind of make a note on your phone. Hey, this might be good to use for this topic. This might be good to use for this topic. I mean, you can do something like that. So we keep an eye out, we keep a note on our phone, but most importantly, don't be scared to use object lessons. You see, if Jesus can use object lessons, we can too. I just hope this gets you thinking about different ways to teach, different ways to connect with people. I'll see you next week.